Welcome to Headstones and Microphones, where we use AI to step into the past through a researched, first-person simulation of history's most interesting people. I am your host, Calvin. While we've added some creative storytelling, our goal is to inspire your own study of these fascinating lives. Now, let's meet our guest. For those who may somehow not know who you are, who are you?
Most folks out there know me by the nickname Bird, or Yardbird if we're being precise, but on my birth certificate it just says Charlie Parker. I spent my days blowing my soul through an alto saxophone and figuring out a brand new way to play jazz.
It is an absolute honor to have you on the show, Bird. Let's start at the very beginning. When and where were you born?
I was born on August 29, 1920, right across the river in Kansas City, Kansas.
What was your given name at birth?
My mother named me Charles Christopher Parker Jr.
Is there a story behind your birth name?
Nothing too grand, brother. I was simply named after my father, Charles Parker Sr. He was a piano player, a singer, and a dancer on the old theater circuits before working as a Pullman waiter on the railroads. So I guess the name carried a little bit of that show business rhythm right from the start.
That musical heritage runs deep. What was your hometown like growing up?
Even though I was born in Kansas, my mother moved us over to Kansas City, Missouri when I was around 7 years old, and that's where I really grew up. Now, Kansas City in the late 20s and 30s was a wild, roaring town. It was run by the Pendergast political machine, which meant the city never really closed. There was gambling, illegal liquor, and nightclubs everywhere. But for a musician, it was absolute heaven. The city was a major crossroads for jazz, and you could hear jam sessions going on all night long.
It sounds like a legendary place to learn the ropes. What was your family life like?
It was pretty tough, Calvin. My father was a talented man, but he struggled terribly with alcoholism, and the Great Depression hit us hard. My parents separated around 1930, and my father wasn't around much after that. I was raised mostly by my mother, Addie. She was a saint. She worked nights cleaning the Western Union office and taking on extra jobs just to make sure my half-brother John and I had a roof over our heads.
She sounds like an incredible woman. What kind of kid were you?
Oh, I was a bit of a wanderer, to tell you the truth. Because my mother worked the night shift, I had a whole lot of freedom. While she thought I was asleep in bed, I was actually sneaking out into the Kansas City night, hanging around the alleyways outside the jazz clubs, just trying to listen to the bands. I was obsessed with the music. I ended up dropping out of high school by the time I was 15 or 16, just to play the saxophone full time.
What did you dream of becoming as a child?
Early on, before the saxophone completely took over my life, I actually sang in the choir at a Catholic school I attended. But the moment I got my hands on a horn, my dream became very simple. I wanted to be the greatest musician on the planet. I wanted to play sounds that nobody else had ever thought of before.
What were some of your favorite activities in school?
When I was attending Lincoln High School, my absolute favorite activity was playing in the school's marching band. That was where I really got to dive into music. To be honest, the classroom stuff didn't hold my attention for very long, but give me an instrument and I was locked in.
What was your first job?
My very first real professional gig was playing as a substitute alto saxophonist for a fellow named Edward Popeye Hale at the Continental Club in Kansas City back in 1938. I was just a teenager getting my feet wet in the local scene.
Was there a moment where you realized you were different from everyone else?
It didn't happen because I felt superior. It actually happened because of a major humiliation. In 1936, I was still learning and decided to sit in on a jam session with some of Count Basie's legendary musicians at the Reno Club. I lost my place in the tune, got completely twisted up, and the drummer Joe Jones angrily threw a cymbal right at my feet to kick me off the stage. Everyone laughed me out of the building. That was the moment I realized that if I wanted to be different and truly great, I had to work harder than anyone else.
Wow, a cymbal thrown at your feet. Talk about motivation. What's a decision that changed everything for you but felt small at the time?
Following that Reno Club disaster, I took a summer gig in 1937 playing at a resort up in the Ozarks with a band leader named Tommy Douglas. It seemed like just another small, out-of-town gig, but while I was up there, away from the distractions of the city, I spent every waking hour practicing. I learned my chords, I memorized solos, and I figured out the architecture of the music. When I came back to Kansas City that fall, the guys who had laughed at me couldn't believe their ears. I was a completely different player.
What was your biggest break?
My biggest break was joining the territory band of a fantastic pianist named Jay McShann in 1938. Playing with McShann's orchestra gave me the platform to travel, make my first real records, and broadcast my solos on the radio. That band brought my sound out of Kansas City and directly to the rest of the country.
What were your biggest struggles before success?
Poverty was a constant shadow, Calvin. When I first moved to New York City in 1939 to make it big, I was completely broke. I didn't have money for food, let alone housing. I had to take a job working as a dishwasher for $9 a week at Jimmy's Chicken Shack. But the silver lining was that the great pianist Art Tatum performed there, so I got to wash dishes and listen to a master play every single night. I eventually had to move into the apartment of my mentor, Buster Smith, just to survive.
Did you ever consider quitting?
Never. Even when I had to pawn my horn just to get by, the music was always running through my head. I couldn't have quit if I tried.
Were there any specific daily habits or routines that you feel were essential to your success?
When I was young, my routine was pure, unadulterated practice. I'm talking about practicing 15 hours a day, every single day until my fingers were raw and my lips were bleeding. Later on, when I was on the road, I didn't care much for traditional schedules. I barely slept, and I was famous for showing up to gigs right at the very last second, or sometimes not at all. But once I stepped on that stage and put the reed to my lips, I took total charge.
What job would you have had if fame never happened?
Shoot, if the music hadn't worked out, I might have ended up working on the railroads like my father, or maybe trying my hand at painting. I loved visual art and loved to paint when I had a quiet moment, though those moments were few and far between.
What was your life like right before fame?
It was a whirlwind of late-night jam sessions in Harlem clubs like Minton's Playhouse and Clark Monroe's Uptown House. Musicians like Dizzy Gillespie, Thelonious Monk, Kenny Clark, and I would gather after our regular gigs and just experiment. We were breaking down the old big band swing formulas and building bebop right there on the spot. We knew we were onto something revolutionary, even if the public hadn't caught on yet.
Did fame bring happiness?
Not the kind of lasting happiness people think. It brought recognition from my peers, which meant the world to me, but fame also brought a tremendous amount of pressure.
What was the downside of becoming famous?
The downside was that younger musicians started copying everything I did, including my worst habits. It broke my heart to see young, talented kids ruining their lives with drugs just because they thought it was part of the bird persona. I used to lecture them all the time, telling them, "Do as I say, not as I do. The music comes from your mind, not from a needle."
What misconceptions did people have about you?
People thought that because I played this incredibly complex, fast, avant-garde music, I didn't care about the tradition or that I was just an uneducated hipster playing by pure instinct. But I was deeply well-read. I loved classical music, Stravinsky, Bartók, Schoenberg. I studied musical theory intensely. My playing wasn't random, it was highly structured.
Who had the biggest influence on your life?
Musically, Buster Smith, King Oliver, Louis Armstrong, and Buster's partner Lester Young. Lester's style on the tenor sax completely changed how I thought about phrasing, and personally, my mother, Addie, for her unconditional love through all my wildest days. What were you working on in your career before you passed away? Toward the end, I was trying to expand the boundaries of jazz even further. I was doing recordings with a full string section, the Charlie Parker with string sessions. A lot of jazz purists didn't like it, but I loved it. I wanted to blend the improvisational freedom of jazz with the beautiful, rich textures of classical orchestration.
When and where and how did you pass away, and how old were you?
I passed away from several health issues on March 12, 1955, at the Stanhope Hotel in New York City. I was only 34. What's a random fact about you most people have never heard? Well, despite my reputation as this brooding, intense jazz genius, my friends knew I actually loved to joke and laugh. I had a tremendous appetite for everything in life. People who knew me well said I ate like a horse, rode in cars like a maniac, and was completely fascinated by machines and how things worked. What was your favorite food? Oh, that's easy, chicken. I love chicken prepared just about any way you could serve it. In fact, one of the stories about how I got the nickname Yardbird or Bird is because when I was out on the road with Jay McShann, our car accidentally hit a stray chicken, a yardbird, in the road. I made the driver stop, turned around, picked it up, and took it to the house we were staying at, so the lady of the house could fry it up for dinner. Did you have any known rivalries? Folks loved to invent a rivalry between me and my brother-in-arms, Dizzy Gillespie, because we were the twin kings of bebop, but there was no real rivalry there. It was pure musical brotherhood. We pushed each other to the absolute limit. When Dizzy and I were playing together, it was like mental telepathy. We changed the world together.
Bird, do you have any closing remarks about the interview or the stories you shared that you would like to share with the listeners before signing off?
I just want to tell everybody out there to listen to the music with an open heart. Don't worry so much about the labels or the lifestyle. Just listen to the notes. Thank you so much for having me on the show, Calvin.
Wow, what an absolute privilege to spend some time with a true architect of modern music. Charlie Bird Parker took the saxophone to heights no one thought possible and completely rewrote the rules of jazz. And that wraps up another conversation from Beyond the Grave. Thanks for joining us on the Headstones and Microphones podcast. Remember, legends may die, but their stories never do. Please help spread the word by sharing and following the pod.